I want to introduce you to G-Rex and Dirty Skittles. They are the host of a show called Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. This is not your typical mental health podcast. It is raw, it's honest, sometimes messy, sometimes funny, but always real. They don't just talk about mental health, they live it out loud. If you've ever felt like your worth was tied to taking care of anyone else or even everyone else, even when it was exhausting you, then chances are you are going to see pieces of yourself in this conversation.
Welcome back to another episode of Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Dirty Skittles, and today we have an awesome guest. Barb, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah.
So what kind of led you to this? Was it because of something that happened in your childhood? Was it something that happened later in life?
Well, the conditioning happened in my childhood that created this codependent, enabling, rescuing, fixing, saving, overgiving woman. And one day I was in therapy talking to my therapist about Dan, and mid-sentence I went, "Oh my God, do you think I need to go to Alanon?" And she was like, "Yes." So in case people don't know what Alanon is, it's a 12-step recovery program for the loved ones of alcoholics. And if you're not familiar with 12-step recovery, you've probably heard of Alcoholics Anonymous, which was the first 12-step recovery program ever created. And it was in the 1930s in the United States. And it was the first time in history that droves and droves of alcoholics got and stayed sober. And the second 12-step recovery program ever created was Alanon for the loved ones of alcoholics. And so you may be wondering, which I was too, like, why do the loved ones of alcoholics need a program? And it's because alcoholism is a family disease. So we tend to think of alcoholism, the problem is the drinking of the alcoholic. That's actually just the tip of the iceberg of the symptoms. And so them stopping drinking is not enough. It's not the actual alcohol, it's a symptom. But what happens with loved ones of alcoholics or other kinds of addicts is that the things we do kind of naturally to try to get them sober, clean, go to rehab, go to detox, go to meetings, end up turning us into like these controlling people who are trying to control and manipulate them into doing what we want. And then we get so focused on them that we completely neglect ourselves. We probably get resentful of them because all of the things we're doing for them and they're not appreciating us and they're not listening to us and they're not taking our advice. And then the alcoholic feels controlled for some reason and gets resentful about feeling controlled, and then they start blaming their loved ones because they're full of resentment against them, and then they drink and they're like, "Oh, it's your fault," and it just turns into this big giant shit show. So I knew about Alanon, and actually Dan, he would go to AA meetings, but he went because it was a warm place that served coffee, not because he was interested in recovering from alcoholism, though he could spout lines from the AA literature. So I went home to Google, and whatever I typed in for Alanon, the word codependent came up. And I was like, what? How is this word a thing that I've never heard of? Because I had been in therapy since I was about 15. I read 70 gajillion self-help books, done workshops, workbooks, seminars, spiritual groups, blah, 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 all the things. And I'm like, how the fuck do I not know about codependence? And I remember saying to my therapist, I'm like, what else don't I know about myself? Like, I don't feel like I got hit in the head with a baseball with the news that I'm alcoholic, that I'm a codependent. I feel like I got hit in the head with a planet. Like, what? I've been searching my whole life. I'm deeply introspective, and there's this giant thing about me that I didn't know. And she said, Barb, I think for you, codependence is like a unifying concept. It pulls together a bunch of things that you did know. You just didn't know that they were related. And at first I was like, she's just saying that to be nice. And as time went on and I started to understand codependence more, I realized that it was probably true. So I started going to Codependence Anonymous and very quickly got a sense of relief. And I think it was partly knowing there's a thing that describes me that is describable, that captures, all these things I've been doing, that there was a program of recovery. There were other people like me, that recovery was possible. And real soon, 3 or 4 weeks in, I remember saying to somebody, I think I need to be reparented. But I thought I made that term up or something. I don't know where I got that. Well, 6 weeks into going to CODA, I went to Cape Cod, Massachusetts to visit some old friends or longtime friends. And one of them had been in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, for 10 years. And she always raved about how utterly transformed her life was as a result of AA. And I was like, you're going to love this. I'm going to Codependence Anonymous. And she was like, oh, that's great. Let's see if we can find a CODA meeting while you're here. And she couldn't, but she found an ACA meeting, which I knew of at the time as ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. And never occurred to me that I qualified, never occurred to me, why do they need a program? But I'd heard of it. And so I was like, I'll go for you because, I'm super accommodating. That's what I'm like. And her dad's an alcoholic. And I walk in, and in the opening reading, they said, we reparent ourselves. And I was like, what? And then they read the list of the 14 traits of an adult child, which is affectionately called the laundry list. And I was like, oh, my God. Now, Heidi tells me I sobbed the whole meeting. I don't remember that. But I bought the literature, came home to New Haven, started going to ACA, which I now know is called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. Now, that I qualified for, as do most people. And I started going to that program. And then a few weeks later, a women's meeting for ACA started in the same church on a different night. And I started going to that. And a few weeks later, me and 3 other women decided we were going to use the 12-step workbook and work through the 12 steps together. And I couldn't get over how vastly my understanding of myself and my family and my patterns changed, how vastly I was changing, how much healing I was getting,